What's crack-a-lackin' gangsters? In this tutorial, we're going to learn some awesome stuff about forms, creating an HTML form. As you can see here, we have a first name, last name, even a password input, and a checkbox to subscribe so we can spam people, and some radio buttons to select what gender you are. So that's pretty cool. Check it out. What's going on, guys? Welcome to your next tutorial. Pretty much the last thing that we need to learn about in HTML is creating a form, because every website has a form. You need to sign up for the website, you need to register, or you need to send an email or contact the website owner. All those are done with forms, and so that's a vital part of HTML. And then we're going to move on to CSS after this tutorial. So that's pretty exciting. We're still going to learn HTML throughout this course, but as for now, this is pretty much the core basics of HTML, besides some organization stuff that we'll learn once we get into the CSS. So let's create a new page within our website. That's going to be a login page. Again, we won't actually be able to process this information yet, since we don't have any back-end work. That's what we're going to do when we get into PHP. But we're going to create a new page anyways. And actually, let's make this, now we'll still stick with HTML because it is HTML course. But let's do login.html. So it already set up some stuff for us within NetBeans, which is pretty cool. We don't really care about that for now. We're going to jump into the body and create our form. Don't worry about what the div tag is. That's what I was talking about, that we'll learn about in the future, is categorizing and organizing things with div and span tags. But again, that comes down to CSS and understanding that as well. So this is pretty much the last HTML course. We're going to learn about forms. So we need to create a form. Pretty simple, right? So within a form, there's a bunch of different elements. Generally, it's an input field that you're going to work with. So let's just create a simple form, something like first name, and then we're going to create input for this form. And how you do that is just type input, and then you give it a type. This is what I'm talking about. There's different types. It could be a button, it could be a checkbox. As you can see, there's a bunch of different stuff down here. For the type, we're going to just actually type text. So that's going to be input type of text that the person puts in. The next attribute that we need is something called name, and we're just going to give this something like first name. And what name means is when we process our form, when we push this information to the processing and make it happen, it's going to look for the name, and that's how it's going to recognize what this actually is. So eventually we're going to save this information in a database, and it's going to say, hey, what is the name of this input field? And it's like first name. Okay, well, I'm going to save that to the first name column in our database, and it's going to be stored there so we actually know what the first name is. So that's pretty important for any form element, is having a name. Again, this is kind of difficult to understand as of right now since we're just learning HTML. Once we get into processing forms within our PHP section, that'll become way more important. But as for now, we're just creating a simple form. So first name, last name. Let's create a password. And there's actually something built into HTML that blocks out whatever kind of text input there is. And that's by using the password type. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, this is just something that you're going to have to get familiar with as you're coding your awesome website that's going to make you millions and millions of dollars. So again, this input type is just going to be a blocked out password. And as you can see, all the input types are pretty familiar. All that changes is the type. So let's even create a checkbox. So generally there's like a something like subscribe to mailing list or something like that, and that's going to be a checkbox type. And again, the name, we want to say something like mailing subscriber. So something simple like that. So we can just check this form out already and see if it's actually doing anything. So we're going to go back to our local host, and instead of index.html, we're going to go to login.html. And we got something set up. Again, it doesn't look exactly like we'd like, but that comes down to CSS. And actually, we could put these on, we could put break statements or break little tags after each one of these, and have it be vertical like you'd expect. But as you see, we have a checkbox, we have a password field, we also have last name and first name. So that's kind of how it looks so far, which is pretty awesome. Another thing that's generally within a form is something called radio buttons, and those are just those buttons that you can toggle between. So we're just going to, again, do our input field. And actually, let's add some break statements to this so it makes our form a little bit nicer. Pretty awesome. This is going to be a type of radio. Again, radio buttons are just like, you know, those old school radios. Half of you probably have never seen them, but you can't, like when you push the play button and the stop button was pushed, the stop button would pop up and then the play button would pop or be pressed down. So that's where the name came from, is like those old school radios. And so I don't know if that helps you remember radio buttons, but again, it's just something that comes with time. So we're going to say name. This is going to be your sex, and it's going to be like male or female. Again, typical input for some type of form like this. And I'm actually going to misspell this name real quickly. And if we save this and go back to our form, as you can see now, we can actually check both of these checkboxes, or I'm sorry, we can check both of these radio buttons. That's because they have a different name value. If the name value is the same, then our browser knows that these are in the same grouping and only one could be selected. So if we go back and actually change this to both have the name value of sex and save and reload our page, it's going to be just as you'd expect. So you can only pick one or the other. When our form is processing this information specifically for the radio buttons, it won't know what the value is. It's like, okay, well, I know that this input with the name of sex is something, but I don't know exactly what that is. So what we're going to pass into the processor is a value. So that's another attribute of a radio button, where pretty much any HTML element will have a value. And we're going to have this value just be like male or the value of female. So then it knows, hey, which one of these radio buttons was checked, or which is being processed throughout this form for the name of sex. And it's either going to say male or female now, because we're passing this value in when it gets processed. Again, this is going to be solidified once we actually start creating our real live website and working with PHP. But again, we're getting close to that, because this is pretty much all we need to know for HTML at this point, and we can actually start developing our website. So that's pretty awesome, guys. Again, congrats for making it this far. I know it's kind of boring a little bit. It's also kind of exciting because we're learning like so much stuff, and once we start using this more often, the sky's the limit, guys. Seriously, there's a bunch of subscribers that have created successful Android apps when I taught Android courses, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with after getting through this course. Just stick with it. Thanks again, guys. Subscribe, like, share the video, and have a great rest of your day.